Let's just close our eyes and put our fingertips together and just take a few deep breaths so that we can arrive in this space completely, fully with who we are, with who we were meant to be, leaving behind everything that inhibits us from being fully present here this afternoon. So a few deep breaths, just in and out. Breathing in all of who I am and releasing with the out breath everything that prohibits us from being present. So just sighs of relief and release. And as we enter into this afternoon, we become fully present of the connection that we have with ourselves, even though only through our fingertips, the physical connection, connecting with all of who I am, and imagining this connection from my hands through to my heart space, into the ether, into this room this afternoon. I intend that whatever needs to be revealed, communicated through our words, through our souls, that's all done in the most appropriate form and time for us to be able to transmute, transform, and transcend anything and everything that's meant for today. And that this space is completely filled with divine love and light and truth and wisdom, with loads of joy as we uncover more of who we are and who we are as a humanity. And so it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Beautiful. So Renata's going to put us in some breakout rooms, and I think we'll just have 5 minutes just to make a connection. And I think in groups of 3, Renata. And just the question for the breakout room is, for me to clear the now, I want to, ... And what that means is clearing out the space for you to be able to be present. So for me to clear the now, I wish to. So almost like a declaration of arriving. So 5 minutes in groups of 3.
All right, so we're going into breakout, so 15 minutes, and with a 30-minute count.
Only about 5 minutes, Renata, not 15.
Oh, you usually like 15. Okay, 5 minutes in total.
No, but Robert and I today.
Perfect. Perfect. Then I'll do a 60-second countdown. So it'll be 6 minutes in total. There are 2 groups of 4 just because we don't have enough to create. Actually, we can have a group of 2. Let's do that rather. Okay, so there'll be, yeah, 1 group of 2.
Okay.
And going to break out in 3, 2, 1. Ah, there's Catherine. You arrived just after I made the breakout room, so you escaped it anyway. You didn't need to leave. You're on mute, Kath. Catherine, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Wait, let me stop the recording.
There's everybody coming back in. We got everyone. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome. And what
Any
what-
comments, questions, insights? Sorry, Ing. Wondering if anybody wanted to say anything coming out of the breakouts.
Just good to go.
Great.
what I love is that everyone always comes from the breakout smiling. It's cool. We build a little family. Okay, so how do I get out of notes view?
Down there, yeah, there.
I don't want that version.
You've got to go to view and go set up show, and then go browse by an individual. Then you can go full screen and it'll still keep a small screen.
How's that?
We're still seeing your bank of slides down the side, but that's okay. We can see your slide, but it's not
Okay.
full screen.
Can you see it nicely though?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I
And we
want
can
to
make it bigger and smaller. So just for everybody to know, between the slide and the webcams, you can grab that vertical line and slide it left and right to make the slide bigger and smaller.
Are you seeing me doing it in here as a
I'm seeing your cursor, but we can make the slide big.
yeah.
Or small. You know, we can choose
Yeah.
to see all the webcams when there's a discussion, and we can choose
Yes.
to make the slide bigger and see fewer webcams.
Okay, great. So shall we start?
Let's go.
Okay, so Rob and I are going to present together. We like to just riff off each other and have a conversation about the things that we've discovered and how they integrate. And it's very much about the common themes that we find in both of our different disciplines and how they weave together. So the first part is, why are we interested in truth and our own inner truth? And this basically boils down to, as Enneagram people, Gurdjieff and Almaas are absolutely emphatic about it. The truth must become your number one love. If you're on the path of wisdom, this is what it's about. Falling in love with the truth and having a thirst for it and wanting to live in alignment with it. Rob?
Yeah. So yeah, part of this will be presentation, and as Ingrid says, we have some great conversations. So we'll get into conversation. I bring some of the Egyptian philosophy, and it inspires Ingrid, and then she brings more of the kind of synthesized spirituality from all over the world, and that inspires me normally to go back to source in Egypt, because that's where it all starts from, and that's the background for Enneagram. It's the background philosophy that underpins the Enneagram. So I'm really passionate about finding out more about that. And the more I learn about Egyptology, the more that I learn about Enneagram. And the more that I learn about Enneagram, the more that Egyptology makes sense. So it all kind of forms this amazing circle. On the screen right now, we can see my art. We'll talk about her in a minute, but that's really understanding how my art relates to the Enneagram. My art is all about balance and harmony, and that has just made absolute sense to me as a type 9, obviously, to make more sense of the Enneagram.
Great. So I just want to test if you're seeing the slide move when I click on the arrow. Has my slide changed? No. Okay, so I'm just going to pause for a second, pause the recording. Thanks, Rob. So what Rob is alluding to there is a kind of unified theory of knowledge where there is consilience, which means that different disciplines discover the same thing using different language and different insights, different methods of finding the truth. And that is something the Enneagram speaks about. You know, it's facets of unity. Richard Rohr says that if we could see through all the 9 types, we would see what God sees. We would see through the eyes of God. And that for me is a metaphor of the whole truth. Each of us have a different map of reality, and if we could have all the maps combined, we would be able to see all the features of the world that we're in. So the common threads in Western philosophy all come together and trace back to ancient Egypt around questions of truth, questions of inner truth, and the foundations of Neoplatonism, which is the philosophy and the Enneagram of what we are in the world, traces back. So what we're going to do today is we want to go back to source, explore some of that, and you're going to see us weaving together our different disciplines. So Rob, the mythological and symbolic, as he said, hieroglyphs, mysticism, and then my stuff, which is more cognitive science and trauma-informed interpersonal neurobiology, that kind of thing, the stuff that I teach in 5D. So let's start off by looking at the kind of contemporary mainstream type of thinking in Western culture about what truth is and what inner truth is, and compare that to an ancient Egyptian sense of what truth is. So, Rob, should I start with the contemporary Western?
Yeah, you go through that and I'll jump in as well.
Okay, great. So contemporary Western mainstream thinking about truth is quite left brain. It's analytical, it's thin slicing in time, then abstracting, analyzing. So taking things apart, deconstructing them. And what we find is quite fragmented knowledge domains. So if you go to a gastroenterologist, they're going to tell you one thing and they're going to put you on a medication. Then you go to a cardiologist for the side effects of the gastromeds, and they put you on something else. You can end up on a whole long list of medications. The specialists aren't speaking to each other, and this deconstructed way of knowledge turns out to be quite decontextualized. So the context of the whole person is broken up, and also us in the world. So, you know, there's generally not a biopsychosocial approach to dealing with human questions in modern science and in psychology too. So that is changing, but this is the kind of mainstream, is that things are broken up. Then we've got a scientific method for establishing truth, which makes quite a lot of assumptions about what can be known. And it's also what we call kind of empirico-rational, which is this idea that I'm here and there's something and I can be completely objective and establish a truth about it, not really appreciating the observer effect, even though when you get deeper into this, that's not really the case in true science and in true philosophy. But we've got the subject-object split in Western culture that's kind of normalized. And it's also, our sense of truth is quite reductive, that only things that are scientifically valid are true, and that's in a very narrow sense. So intuition and things like that are kind of dismissed, and even psychology is dismissed as pseudoscience. A lot of things are dismissed. And indigenous knowledge systems, you say to somebody, you know, I talk to my cat and we have a proper conversation, or I talk to a tree, they'll look at you like you're a bit psychotic. But if you said that in an indigenous society, no one would bat an eyelid, because there are different intelligences going on, and we don't dismiss things like gut feelings and clairaudience, clairsentience. There are many forms of intelligence that are dismissed in modern science. And it's only in kind of very fringy esoteric circles that people even feel comfortable talking about these other forms of intelligence. So that's contemporary Western thinking very much. If you read Ian McGilchrist, he speaks about how Western philosophy or Western culture has become incredibly left brain dominant at huge cost because it disconnects us from nature and it disconnects us from our whole person understanding of what we are and our true nature. And that means that when we come to the inner truth idea that goes along with that, it's very individualistic. So it becomes relative. It's like my truth can be radically different to your truth. So we disconnect around that. And it's lost its connection to the kind of foundation of our interbeing, the fact that we're all connected. And that represents more fragmentation, more disconnection, and disconnection is a fundamental of trauma. So I'll get a bit more to that. So Rob, do you want to jump in on the Western popular culture thing? Oh, just one thing before you do. I want to put in a big caveat here around what I've just said, because this is kind of mainstream. It's Western culture. Within more profound questioning circles, like in the cognitive science of wisdom, John Vervaeke, this thinking is not prevalent. There's a much deeper sense of our embeddedness, our connection, the fact that all truth is relational. Everything is relational. So I don't want to set up a kind of straw man argument like Western philosophy is a lot of garbage, because that would be intellectually dishonest. So I'm talking about a kind of mainstream average person going around these days. But it's not the whole picture. So I just wanted to put that in. So Rob?
Yeah, really important to say. Yeah, the scientific method, we love the scientific method. It's one piece of the jigsaw puzzle. And that's where we get a bit confused in the West, because we think it's the whole jigsaw puzzle. The example that I always give with Western contemporary thinking is Martin Seligman, the godfather of positive psychology. So if you read his books, he's very clear about what he was doing, and basically he was torturing dogs with electric shocks. And he noticed that when he tortured dogs with electric shocks, they developed a negativity bias. And it was from that he flipped to realize, well, if you can develop a negativity bias, you can develop a positivity bias. And that leads to what is essentially, in the positive psychology field, is more or less aligned with Buddhist practices. So by going through our Western decontextualized separate approach, we get to the same place that Buddhists got 2,000 of years ago without torturing dogs. So that's a good example that I give as well. And I was at a lecture a couple of years ago with a positive psychologist and a Buddhist priest, and they were having a conversation. And what's interesting is that the positive psychology kind of catches up with Buddhist practices, but it never goes further and beyond than the ancient practices that were developed in the Indian subcontinent. So yeah, contemporary thinking in the West, it's very separate, very disconnected. The polar opposite in Egypt. Do you want to share again, Ingrid?
Sorry, yeah, I just lost it there for a second. Yeah.
So yeah, it's actually the polar opposite in ancient Egypt. They make very few assumptions. It's very rational. It's very logical. It's very scientific. So there is really only one assumption made in Egyptian philosophy, and that is that there is an unknown mystery. The unity, the monad, is unknown and it's unknowable. What they're saying by that is it's outside of human the extent of human comprehension. You know, we're in this little body here. We're not capable of being God in inverted commas or understanding God. You'd have to be greater than to understand on that level. So they're saying there's a mystery. That mystery it runs through their whole belief system. But from that, we get to the unity, the monad, and everything is connected. Everything is a part of unity, and that's inherent across the Egyptian philosophy, which leads to this kind of this unified truth, which kind of frees us up from the kind of intellectual debate that we have around who we are and what God is, and my God's the right God, your God's the wrong God. All of this takes up a huge amount of energy and causes all sorts of problems around the world. So they had a much firmer base than we have. The universe is unity, it's all part of one. And then the next law is the law of balance and harmony. For a universe to work, it has to move towards balance and harmony and equilibrium. That's how the universe works. It's how the cosmos works. It's very logical and rational. If we didn't have that central law, the universe would fall apart. It would just be a mess. So we have these two kind of guiding principles right at the top of the pyramid, if you like, of Egyptian philosophy, is unity, radical unity of everything. And that means all energy, that means all material, it means all people, it means everything in the universe is part of one. And then the first and the principal law of the cosmos is that all things in the universe seek balance and harmony. And from that, everything follows down completely logically, completely rationally into a full cosmology. And of course, in an Enneagram, this is really helpful for us to work with. We're working in a unified system. We're working in a unified system of personality strategies, but we're all one. We're all one in terms of human beings. We're all one in terms of our experience of human beings. So it's very much about the whole. It's all very holistic, but it's infused with this idea of the mysterious, the mystery of life, the mystery. There is a mystery that we will never know. And we can't know, and there's something, that there's something quite humbling about that. In the West, we kind of have this prideful idea that, well, we know a lot of things, and what we don't know could be known or could be discovered. So there's the potential for us as human beings to know and understand everything in the universe. Well, that's the prideful aspect of human beings, and the humble is that the parts of life that we'll never learn. And I think this is the big shock point, if you like, for humanity right now, is to understand the humility of our species. I think we all accept that we're not going to live forever as an individual. But I don't think we're fully realizing that humanity itself could and will, in time, obviously, come to an end, and there's a real deep humility in that, and how we relate to the planet and the world around us. Anything to add there, Ingrid? What's that stimulating for you?
I think I want to add about that point in the bottom about heteru, and that if we understand unity and connectedness, our understanding of inner truth is not at all individualistic. It's very much about the heart. And there's an interesting combination in the Egyptian mythology where this heteru, Hathor, as the feminine, is a combination of nurturing, value, joy, love, and things like astronomy and higher laws of the cosmos. So it's a very integrated sense of what inner truth is. It's not an individualistic, well, I feel this way. It's not like that. It's truthful in relation to things that are lawful, like the movements of the planets, as well as something that is fundamental to who we are as human beings, which is our connectedness and our kind of sociality, this question of embeddedness. So it's not at all the sense of truth is in the head. Truth is in our being and our relationship. So that's that relationality part. So cognitive science and various things catching up there again with Buddhism and ancient indigenous cosmologies is a deep understanding that we are heart, mind, embodied beings. And this point here, that inner truth happens in the present moment where there is a relationship between our materiality, energy, matter, we're made of atoms, our consciousness as a kind of ray of illumination that we don't understand what consciousness is. Cognitive science and neurobiology trying to figure out what it is. They're debating, is it emergent? Is it, what is it? And then the life force, which is also understood to be this mystery. If you think about all the miracles of science, we can land something on the moon, but we can't resurrect a fly. We can't resurrect an ant. So appreciating this mysterious quality of consciousness and the life force, and those things as an interface with materiality. So it's trying to, the West is grappling analytically with what indigenous cosmologies, and I think of Egyptian mythology as an indigenous cosmology, that there's a subtle, exquisite appreciation of our contact boundary with existence. And it's incredibly beautiful. And a lot of what Egyptian mythology does is helps us to appreciate the miracle of that. And then there were times in those temples where I just collapsed in tears over the beauty of the philosophy of our existence, the reverence and the awe that is captured in this cosmology. So
it was great going around the temples because I didn't realize that Ingrid thought that the hieroglyphs were talking about historical events, as they would in, say, a Roman text or Greek text. So when I was explaining some of the philosophical, spiritual meaning of the hieroglyphs, then Ingrid was just bursting into tears of how beautiful it is. And it is beautiful. And what's coming out for me is you're talking there, Ingrid, is why go to Egyptian philosophy? Well, because of the radical mystery and the radical clarity. And you get those two together. And it is just absolutely breathtaking when you see what they were talking about and how they were talking about. And it gives us so many answers that we need today. So that's those two, if you can connect those two concepts of radical mystery and radical clarity, that's what Egyptology gives you. And
I want to link that. Carry on, Rob. I just want.
And we have a gateway into that through the Enneagram. The Enneagram brings us into that.
And the Enneagram is exactly the same. It's radical mystery and radical clarity. If that symbol appeared in front of you and you didn't have somebody to be a channel of transmission for you of what does this thing mean, whether it's a Russ Hudson lecture or a community like this talking about the meaning of the symbol, you have no access to either the precision of the Enneagram, which is uncannily, radically precise, or the mystery of it. And that is the fact that it's a lifelong journey, this Enneagram path of wisdom, and the symbol disclosing itself to us all the time. So what I find in ancient Egypt with Rob is the hieroglyphs are the same as the Enneagram. They are self-disclosing. The temples are self-disclosing, and the wisdom that is captured in the symbols and the hieroglyphs is timeless and mysterious. It's metaphorical, but it's also precise. So maybe that's a bridge, Rob, to appreciating the symbols here that the word for truth that's captured symbolically. It's not an abstract symbol. It's got a lot of dimension to the actual word.
Yeah, and I'll just pick up on that, which is Gurdjieff talks about the Enneagram as the fundamental hieroglyph of a universal language. So he captures that amazingly well. So yeah, unity is the way that the universe is constructed, but the universe is in operation. It exists. It's a being. It's in process, and therefore it must have a universal law. And this is the law, the universal principle of Ma'at. The Greek word for God, which is mistranslated hugely in the word God, is neta, and it's the origin of our words nature and nurture. But in this context, we're talking about the principle. So we can also talk about universal principles. So Ma'at is this principle of balance, of harmony, of equilibrium. And it's symbolized beautifully by this image of the goddess or the nature of Ma'at. And everything's symbolic in Egyptian, so always look at things in the way that it's drawn. So she's got these beautiful arms outstretched with wings. We've got a sense of left and right, haven't we? We've got a sense of duality, and that's what balance is between the poles of the duality of the universe. There's always detail in the Egyptology. So she's leading with her left arm, and she's got her left knee raised, and that signifies the left connects to the right brain. So there's an imbalance in this image, right? Because she's not looking straight out at us. She is looking to her left. So there's a slight imbalance. There always will be in Egyptology, because it's the way that the universe works, but it's bringing that back into balance. So directly under her, we can see where it says the nature of Ma'at. We can see the hieroglyphs above, which spell out Ma'at. So if you can you see that symbol that looks like a scythe?
This one here.
It is, yeah, there we go. If you can point it out, thanks. So that is a scythe, and that symbolizes truth cutting through falsity. It symbolizes light cutting through darkness. And it also symbolizes the barrier between the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain. So we've got this symbolic idea of a symbol of a scythe cutting through. Underneath the scythe, the kind of horizontal hieroglyph you can see, that's actually a plinth. So it's, if you imagine a statue on a plinth that holds it up, that's symbolic of foundation. So in some way, truth cuts through falsity, and this is a foundational principle of the universe. The forearm is the A, and that symbolizes a force. So truth cutting through falsity is a fundamental of the universe, and it's a force. And then the semicircle underneath is the primordial mound, and this represents manifestation. So within this one word, in these imageries, we've got the scythe cutting truth, cutting through, foundational force of manifestation. And then we've got the little, the sitting Ma'at there, which defines this as we're talking about the actual principle, the nature, the goddess of Ma'at. So Ma'at, in Egyptian, they use many words, mean many things. The same word means many things, and so there's a connection between words. So we were talking about this earlier, and we just thought this was really nice to share, that Ma'at also means to see. So it's spelt in the way on the left. You've got the scythe representing Ma'at, but you've got the eye to say that we're talking about seeing. We're talking about light. There's a connection again with light there, isn't there? And then the two A's are spelt out with the vulture there, and the vulture signifies beginning, creation, existence. So we've also got this association with initiation, creation through Ma'at to see. Ma'at, the goddess, the nature of Ma'at is the principle. And then Ma'at, meaning truth, is the symbol is the hieroglyphs on the right. So we've already looked at those, but they've got the feather is there, which we'll look at a bit later. So this really universal principle of Ma'at, it's the guiding principle of the universe, the cosmos. It's also the guiding principle of Egypt, the country of Egypt. And that there's a big lesson to be learned here, because our guiding principle in the West is progress, but it's never defined. Progress towards what? Progress towards never getting sick, progress towards never dying, progress towards trashing this planet and going and finding another planet somewhere and trashing that one. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So we're not defining what our guiding principle is, but theirs was very clear. They were bright enough to realize that we need to live in an environment that's stable. We need to live in an environment that's healthy. So there's a really key message for us here. And then we've got this beautiful quote, which captures how important Ma'at is. Your food is Ma'at, your drink is Ma'at, your bread is Ma'at, your beer is Ma'at. The oil of your head is Ma'at, the clothing of your body is Ma'at. You inhale incense in the form of Ma'at, and the breath of your nostrils is Ma'at. Nothing is not Ma'at. And we're living so far out of balance and equilibrium right now, individually and collectively. So there's so much to pull forward from here. Ingrid?
Yeah, it's really amazing. This understanding of what truth is. And for me, having the symbols, they're metaphorical, they're not phonetic. So we don't as easily lose the sense of what things are in Egyptian symbology. We remember that's what it really is. And it's embodied, it's three-dimensional. It's about our existence as human beings. And so if you compare it to something like the sword of truth in Christianity, the scythe of truth, cutting through truth and falsehood, when we hear the sword of truth, from our language, we don't really think about the metaphor. We don't stop and notice. Why a sword? What is a sword? What is the sword of truth? What is the bread of truth? What is the foundation of truth? Like if you think about the Christian metaphor of building my house upon the rock, that's like truth is my foundation. That's what's trustworthy. That's where I want to build my house. So this primordial mound, you see it. There it is. It's a plinth. It's something. And you know, that sense of a foundational grounding for what we are, that's very physical. Like if we connect it to our bodies don't lie. Our bodies are in the present moment, which is the only reality. So in a disembodied Western mindset where we're walking around like our body is a transport vehicle for our brains, we lose touch with this embodied sense of what's going on, and that all of these metaphors come from our 3D experience. So for me, that's very important. And then the idea of truth as a force, I think that as well is really, really important, especially in a world of something like fake news, where falsehood usurps our consciousness, where our mind is kind of colonized by falsehood, that we can align with the force of truth, the foundation, the primordial foundation and the scythe, to find our way and to find inner grounding in reality. So that's really important. And then the other thing is the relationship between truth and light, which is also it carries through in every philosophy, in every religion, every tradition, is this metaphor of illumination. So the light allows us to see where we're going, where we are. The metaphors of rays of awareness that allow us to shine a light on our inner being. Unconscious basically means we can't see it. The cave you fear to enter is where the truth is that you seek. There are these metaphors of light and darkness in all of our traditions. So appreciating that comes from an embodied experience of the difference between stumbling in the dark and having illumination. And when we translate those metaphors back into here I am, what does it mean for me to walk in the light? What is it for me to stand up and feel a sense of presence in light? It's very different to being unconscious of where I am in space and time and disembodied, overthinking things. No, what if I step into my life with a sense of light? So these metaphors for me are very transformational if you engage with them fully in your body. And yeah, so that was what I want to mention. And also that truth is connected to ethics and justice. In science, we think we can have neutral knowledge, neutral truth. What the Egyptian tells us is that there's no such thing as anything that's ethically neutral because everything is relational. So truth has an ethical implication. And I think that's something that we've lost.
Yeah. And I just want to pick up on the light and dark as well, just to really underline, in a system of radical unity, it's not that light is against dark, and it's not that light is good and dark is bad. Light can't exist without dark. So in the Egyptian philosophy, it's very much about bringing the two together. So it's radical inclusion and it's radical unity.
But look at this quote again. I mean, isn't this absolutely beautiful? That the truth is what we live on. And that reminds me as well of, Christian philosophy, the metaphors of the bread of life, which is truth, and living on the word. I mean, it sounds like I'm fully, evangelical Christian, but these metaphors link across traditions. In Vedic philosophy, you've got Jyotish Vidya, knowledge of the light, all these metaphors of light, bread, nourishment. The truth is nourishing. So noticing these metaphors, connecting with them, and then understanding, what does that mean for me in this body, in space and time, on this earth? That's what the key is here. So let's go on a bit.
Yeah. And it's always symbolic. Everything is symbolic. The breath of your nostrils is my art. There's one atmosphere, but we take it in through two nostrils into two lungs, which fills us with the oxygen that we need to live. And then we breathe out through one mouth. So we've got duality and unity in that tiny, 3 or 4 words there. There's a huge amount to think about there, or not to think about. That's Western, isn't it? To experience as we breathe.
Yeah. Should we maybe take a question here? Anybody got anything to ask about Ma'at?
I'm wondering about the symbolism of the wings.
So the wings would represent, obviously there's a connection with air. So levity, lightness is coming up there, which picks up on the feather, right? The Ma'at is always associated with a feather. The Egyptians looked at the world around them. They lived embedded in a natural world, and they had intimate knowledge of the different animals that lived around them, and so they didn't pick the sort of the simplistic idea that Egyptians were animal worshippers. No, they looked at the inherent function and operation and behavior of each animal. So air, Horus is a falcon. The Mut is a vulture. You know that it's associated with the behavior of birds. So bird-like is symbolic, and we've got that birds rise up to the sky, right? So, and then obviously you've got the duality of the wings.
Yeah, and the bird's eye view. And if we jump to the significance of the feather, when you die in Egyptian psychotheology or cosmology, your heart is weighed against a feather. And that's the kind of equivalent to the Day of Judgment. Is your heart light, or is it kind of burdened with the wrong things that you've done, which implies that every wrong thing is a violation of truth. That lying or deceit or breaking the truth as the primordial foundation is the first sin. So if we lose truth in ourselves, we lose truth with the world, and that breaks things to the extent that you know, then you're lost. Then you're out of it. You're off the map of goodness. So that's the significance of the feather, is it's the ultimate measure, the truth of, have you lived a good life? Have you lived a life of truth? And that thing that we spoke about once as well, the highest accolade that you could say of somebody is that you are true of voice. And isn't it fascinating that veracity and true of voice is the virtue of the heart center? That's not an accident at all. So that's jumping ahead a little bit to the essence of the heart center, which is truth.
I was just going to pick up, just for context as well. And it's so amazing when we take ourselves out of the world that we live in. We can go back to 4,500 years ago when we get the earliest hieroglyphs and writing. Remember, that comes at the end of tens of thousands of years of evolution and development. And of course, in a society that transmits orally, your voice had to be your bond. They didn't have writing, so you had to. This is why they put so much emphasis on true of voice, because if someone said something to you, it had to be true, and the messages had to be transmitted through time orally. So this emphasis on truth also has a very practical element. And once we started writing things down, we start to lose truth. We can start to play around with words, and words become, you know, words become something we can manipulate. So so there's also that to think about. This comes out of tens of thousands of years of human evolution.
Oh, that's so cool. So let's look at the Enneagram understanding of this thing of truth must become your number one love. There's some quotes here. You have to discover the difference between a truth and a lie, and first of all in oneself. That connects with this wonderful and very famous Shakespeare quote, which I thought was Socrates at first, but I discover it's Polonius speaking in Shakespeare. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night and the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. So if you are true to yourself, if you're in alignment and integrity, that veracity, which is the virtue of the heart center, from the heart, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's where we want to be. Living from truth. Yeah.
And I love that Gurdjieff quote as well. Speak the truth. One must know what the truth is and what a lie is, and first of all in oneself. That is the Enneagram work there in one perfect sentence.
So I think let's skip the principles and move on a bit so that we can do some stuff around the three centers, because I know this is a rabbit hole of infinite proportions. I'm just going to mention here that the relationship between truth and trauma, which is pretty fundamental, is that trauma impacts our ability to be in the here and now. It impacts our ability to know who we are, where we are, what we feel, what our true self is. It distorts our sense of identity. It distorts our sense of what's good for us. So we find ourselves reenacting trauma when we've been traumatized. Everybody's got a story of that. Someone who had an abusive childhood getting into repetition compulsion in their adult relationships, recklessness, so being out of alignment based on traumatization. And these images in the brain, Bessel van der Kolk did research, and he discovered that traumatized people have a traumatized sense of identity. So if you put someone in an MRI and you ask them to think about themselves and their life, the medial prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, no fancy stuff, I don't really know about it, but the takeaway is that people with a lot of trauma, that part of their brain doesn't light up. The same way as people who've had a healthy and nurturing childhood where they've been validated and they've been given a sense of self in community. So this is why trauma is so important, and healing trauma is so important, because when we heal, we're able to integrate, we're able to come into relationship with ourselves, with one another, and with the present moment. And fragmentation, disintegration, and disconnection is fundamental to trauma. Lawrence Heller says that all trauma is a form of heartbreak, which is disconnection. Daniel Siegel speaks about disconnection and disintegration. And Naranjo speaks about distortion and degradation of consciousness, which is also a form of a kind of mangling of the truth. The truth of who I am gets distorted and impinged on because I can't express myself in childhood. My needs aren't met. So what we're doing in expanding the territory of truth in an inner sense is restoring our self-connection to our healthy instincts, to our sense of self, to our true feelings. And this is a lifelong journey of healing and reconnection. So I wanted to just touch on that. Rob, I don't know if you want to speak about anything. I know eco-trauma is very close to your heart.
Yeah, I was just going to add that we collectively we're in deep, deep trauma right now. And I don't think we realize quite the extent of which the lives that we lead are out of harmony, out of balance. They're not according to the laws of Mart. And as you go further back in history, the likelihood is that everyday life was less traumatic. Now, we also don't want to look back with complete rose-tinted spectacles. Bad things happened, for certain, and people got ill, and people generally lived shorter lives. There were wars and there were massacres. But generally, the further back we go in history, the less likely kind of, other than intense events, everyday life was less traumatic. We were embedded within our community, we were embedded within the environment. We probably didn't move very far. In Egypt, you know, the sun rises and sets every day. The weather doesn't really change very much. Water didn't come from the sky in Egypt, it comes from the River Nile, and it provided all year round, pretty much, with a few exceptions. So our lives now are very traumatized. And also the separation, the individuality, it's not something that the more indigenous populations experience. So it's just to add that, really, you know, the context is you know, we tend to think society started 6,000 years ago. No, it didn't. Human beings have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. Developing, living healthy lives, thriving. The idea of the noble savage is absolute rubbish. Humans thrived because we were embedded in an environment that we were built to live in Africa, particularly, until human beings started to spread around the planet. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, really, to put a context on where we are today, here and now, to 2024.
And in these indigenous relationship with the environment, if you really are true to yourself, if you're honest with yourself, seeing a sea of garbage on a beach is a form of trauma. We know that it's wrong. We know that it's painful. Seeing animals being factory farmed, we quickly go past those images on social media because it hurts us to see suffering. It hurts us to see animals suffering and dying and ice caps melting and polar bears having nothing to eat. It hurts us to see habitat destruction. So these are forms of trauma that we hide from ourselves because it's just too painful and heartbreaking. So we deaden ourselves as much as possible. So we aren't really acknowledging the level of traumatization. Even walking into a supermarket and seeing a shelf full of plastic that's going to outlive us by 700 years, our right relationship to that is trauma. So when we talk about eco-trauma, a lot of it is trauma that we aren't actually even acknowledging. So we wanted to point this out, that healing is about reconnection. We would have a right relationship to the earth, and we would really be caring about our earth and not destroying habitats. So in the Enneagram terms, what we're talking about here is various forms of anti-self actions. And what that means is self-deadening and self-abandonment and lying to ourselves in various ways. So if you look at all of these are our responses to early relational trauma in the Enneagram, is that our true selves feel unwelcome. And this is, it might be intergenerational trauma. It might be our parents not really being available. It might be the fact that our mother went back to work when we were 6 weeks old, which in an indigenous society would have been absolutely unthinkable, and going to be in care with strangers. So we learn to put parts of ourselves aside and to self-disconnect. So all of the anti-self actions from an Enneagram and trauma perspective are unconscious, self-rescuing, self-protection mechanisms. They're adaptive strategies to get out of the trauma that we land in when we incarnate on this earth into this kind of world. And then the healing journey is about integration. So this is a picture from Naranjo's character in Neurosis, which I've changed a bit. And what we see in the Enneagram theory of being a person is that we go from our instincts being distorted, preoccupied, fragmented, like I'm so fixated on self-praise that I forget about the Essex, or I forget about the social. Stack that any way you want. The instincts are fragmented. One is blind, one is dominant, they're out of balance, they're not integrated. Our feelings are not integrated. We could talk about this by itself for 3 hours, but the journey of healing, the mind, the heart, and the instincts is a journey of integration and balance. It's about getting to that true self and a restoration of wholeness. And Rob, maybe you can speak about the tension that we have to reconcile to get there.
And this tension is built into the mythology in Egyptology, in ancient Egypt. So Heru is the Egyptian name for Horus, and that represents the higher self, the falcon that flies high in the sky and has pinpoint vision. Set is the animal part of us. It's the trickster. He's the lord of the red land, the lord of the desert. And this is the part of us that is our human incarnation. Just very quickly in the mythology, there are many battles between Heru and Set, but ultimately neither of them wins. And it's not until Jehuti Thoth, Set steps in. That's the principle of the intellect, to bring them together. To allow them to cooperate. So it's ultimately their guiding mythology in ancient Egyptian is once again it's a mythology of unity and cooperation. Light doesn't beat dark, good doesn't beat evil. They come together to form a unity of a whole.
Beautiful. And they're also understanding that ego transcendence is not about killing our ego. It's not about overcoming the ego and living in a kind of disembodied spiritual existence where we aren't in relationship with our needs and our compulsions and our survival angst. It's a full acknowledgement that we're here, we're embodied in these three centers, we have these instinctual drives, and transcendence means dropping below that and being able to see it, being able to see the tension between Heru and Set, the tension between the higher self and the lower self. And the law of three is very much about that. It's about the friction and the relationship between ego and what the Enneagram refers to as essence, which is maybe more, you can more conceptualize it as intention and will, is what do I really want to do in this situation versus what are my temptations and compulsions and my mesmerization with the world and my biological drives and needs and fears kind of compel me to do. So how do we come to that point in the middle, which is the inner witness? The inner witness is able to see, wow, the ray of illumination, the inner witness, the witnessing consciousness allows me to illuminate this whole situation and to see the playing out of my drives and needs and struggles as a human being, which are going to be until the day we die, struggling with our minds, struggling with overwhelming feelings, struggling with insecurities, and trying to find the truth. It's a point of integration of polarity, which is where we're going to find the balance and the joy and the foundation of right action. If you see the king in the middle, which is kind of a symbol here for ourselves as our ego, as the driver of our life, as our will, as rulership, as personal mastery, as agency. Who's driving our life? Who's sitting on the throne of our life? That one is walking in the middle of the perfect balance of there's the light and there's the darkness. There's the good and the bad. There are these polarities. Renata teaches all about this. So in the middle, where do we find courage? Courage is between cowardice and foolhardiness in Aristotle. These Greeks got all of this stuff from Egypt. If you think of that example, where is courage? It's the perfect balance point between one extreme and another. So yeah, just wanting to bring out that polarity element there, and that it's not about escaping the ego or breaking the ego. We live with our ego if we're embodied in 3D.
Yeah, and it's that tension that creates the personality without, any idea of escaping, the vice and just living in virtue. It's that's not realistic. So it is all about getting into equilibrium and balance between this physical vehicle that we're in for life. We're never going to escape it, and having this higher self, this the spiritual aspect, if you like, or whatever is the right language for you. That is the higher intellectual, the higher feeling, and the integrated instincts. In reality, in practice, that's what it does.
And I just notice the word, it's not realistic. It's not truthful. You're not being honest with yourself. When people say get real about your shadow, what are they saying? They're saying come into balance. Don't pretend that's not there. So it's a constantly, I'm super aware of the language in Sufism, the real, the ultimate thing that we are trying to engage with. We're not trying to go into fantasy. And then this journey of integration and healing, if I can move on, Rob, you okay?
Yeah, we need to, yeah.
Yeah, so talking about the levels of integration, it's wholeness, it's connection, integration internally, integration interpersonally, integration in our relationship to the world and the cosmos in the holy ideas. So let's go to the centers. Can we jump there?
Yeah, we're going to have to be quick, aren't we?
Okay.
How long have we got today?
We've got until 6, so we've got 45 minutes. So
Okay.
yeah. So if you look here, now we're going to the head center, and I've put in the integrative descriptions of the 3 types within each center, just to remind you what center is what. The head center is types 5, 6, and 7, and these are responses to what the hell is going on. I find myself on a rock going around a star in the middle of freaking nowhere, and every head center type is going to understand the sense of radical unknowing. What can I trust? How am I going to decide anything? I'm lost. I've got to try and get to know what's going on here. 5s are trying to know everything. 6s are like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen next. And 7s are like, if I do every single thing, then maybe I'll find out what's trustworthy, because, you know, if I test things out, then I'll discover whether they're true or not. So that's the head center core problematic, is what can I trust? And what do the Egyptians tell us about that? Rob, let's hear about Jehuti. Jehuti's my crush. I'm in love with him.
So Jehuti is the principle of the intellect. There he is in the lower image. He's often he's often pictured with the head of an ibis, and you see those ibises in South Africa a lot. You call them hardydars. And it wasn't until I'd been to South Africa several times where a taxi driver said, "Look at that white and black hardydar, that's the Egyptian ibis." And I hadn't realized that that was the sacred ibis of Egypt. So you normally see the brown ones, but the black and white ones are the sacred ibis of Egypt. Jehuti is the principle of reason, rationality, objectivity. He's the nature of language. Words are in the head center. When we talk, we're using the head center to formulate language and words. He's the principle of numbers, and sacred geometry was incredibly important to ancient Egyptians, and maybe we can do a session on sacred geometry sometime, because that is super fascinating. So yeah, this is the principle of the rational mind, the logical mind, the intellect, cognition, etc. And it can be really helpful just with the symbol through. You know, we have this theory in Enneagram, in Enneagram teaching, but it can be just really helpful to bring in that right brain symbology of Jehuti. And obviously when we speak, the language is formed in the intellectual mind, but we speak with the voice. So the voice is very much the body, and the throat is the kind of conduit between the body and the head. And it's through the throat chakra that we bring out the truth that's in our heart, our inner truth, and we broadcast that to the world around us by the voice box. And the Egyptians talk about the throat of Thoth, so associating the voice box with Thoth. Thoth is another word for Jehuti, by the way. So Jehuti or Thoth, I would say the same thing. And then we have the eye of Horus, the eye of Heru, which is the third eye as well. The all-seeing eye that is also known as the eye of Ra, Ra being the solar principle of energy. So that's what we have. Is there anything there to add, Ingrid?
I want to talk about why I love Jehuti so much, is because here's the dude here that is recording the score of the heart and the feather of truth. So the ray of illumination of the intellect, its right function is to actually gather information from experience and from the inside of who we are. So if we take our awareness and we do this work of achieving self-knowledge, which is the inner path of every spiritual tradition. Buddhism, discover the truth within. Have you ever heard that before? Yes, always, everywhere. The truth is within. And it's through the mind, it's through awareness. It's not through cognitive apparatus and analysis. It's through the existence of awareness itself, in which everything arises. And through awareness, we're able to notice what's going on in us, and we're able to calibrate. We're able to know. We're able to journal. What is the truth of my existence? What is the truth of my experience? We're able to communicate our experience with other people. And he's the one who's actually noticing what is the relationship between my heart and truth. If he weren't there, no one would be able to say, how much does this heart weigh? So are you using your awareness, the faculty of your awareness, to weigh your heart? And if you're using your mind right, from an Enneagram perspective, you're using your mind to weigh your heart. So that for me is just something very exquisite, and that it's precise, and there are laws. He's all about mathematics, and there's a precision to it. So your mind can become very, very precise at weighing your heart. And then you're going to know, am I telling the truth or not? Because your mind is going to notice, oh, something doesn't feel right. Did I tell the truth, or is something off? That's what you're using your awareness for on the inner journey, on the wisdom path. So that for me is quite a big deal.
And it's very difficult, again, for us to understand that this idea of radical truth, to have a knowledge of origin. So when we talk about truth and speaking the truth of the heart and speaking the truth through the head, we're all living on such unfirm ground. And the Egyptian invite us into finding a firmer ground, because that's the ground that they walked on. It's the ground they lived on. So this knowledge comes from a fundamental knowledge of origin that wasn't up for debate, and it wasn't based on religious ideology. It was based on some very logical and rational laws, if you like, of the universe that came through Jehuti, that came through Thoth.
And there's so much more to say about Jehuti. I saw this incredible sculpture in the Egyptian Museum that is venerating Jehuti as the origin of writing itself. And if you think about writing as an extension of our ability to communicate, to transmit knowledge to one another, for us to be able to read medieval Sufi philosophers and have our awareness illuminated, to read the Bible, to read the Quran, that is the gift of the transmission through text. So just appreciating the significance of communication and encoded communication that can be transferred. You know, the internet is an extension of Jehuti, that we have a global mind that we can now communicate through. I mean, if you appreciate the miracle of that, it's pretty profound. So let's move on to the body center, and we can maybe do a practice there, because we've spent a lot of time on the mental center.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the body center, these three types again, beautiful condensed descriptions. I'm sure they took incredibly long time to come to hitting the note of what these types are about in the integrative report. The body center, all about control, autonomy, dignity, justice, and me being here in the world. So it's about the foundation of goodness. You know that rage happens when something is violated, when something bad happens, when something is harmed. That's where the natural, I call it holy rage, is the counterpart to holy love. So this is all about goodness and right action in essence. So Rob, let's hear about Geb and about the body center.
Yeah, so just before I talk about Geb, I just want to say if Jehuti is your guy, then Ma'at is my girl. So yes, so Ma'at is really the guiding principle of the body center. If we're in equilibrium, we're here. Our body operates to keep us in homeostasis. If we move out of homeostasis, we get sick, we move into dis-ease, and then eventually when things move so far out of homeostasis that the physical body can't continue, we die. So Ma'at rules the body center, but we're looking here more at the chakra system, and so Ingrid and I were looking at the principle, the god of Geb, which is the earth. So you can see him there on the top picture. He's the brown person kind of lying down. So he's covered in leaves. He's very kind of fecund. He's very part of nature. And you'll also see that he's twisting. So the Egyptians were aware of Geb being in movement, certainly. And probably almost certainly that the earth was spinning. They understood this. So Geb it's the foundation that we all come from. We come from Geb, and in the ancient mythology of Egypt, Geb is the father of Set. So quite literally, the human body, in the mythology of ancient Egypt, the human body, the lower chakras, the root chakra, the physical chakras, are the son of or the children of Geb. So Geb is the earth, and then we have the woman. If you see the arch going over the woman, she is the principle, the goddess of the night sky, the sky. So we have as above, so below here. So we are our being is placed between earth and sky, and as long as we're on earth, we're in this we're in this kind of, what's the word? I don't know what the word I'm looking for. We're sandwiched between earth and sky. We're sandwiched between higher self and lower self. And we could talk about that picture. There's so much imagery in that picture. But yeah, and Ingrid and I were in the Temple of Hathor in Dendera. It's stunning. It's a spectacular temple. We walked into one room, one space, and there was this gigantic image of Nut on the sky. It was a square room, so she was kind of squared off a bit, and it was just that was when I lost it. I walked into the room and it was too beautiful for words. It was absolutely overwhelmingly beautiful that the ceiling should still be there, with this image, a beautiful image of Nut on the sky. So there's Nut, the sky, there's Geb, the earth, and he really, we can make associations with the lower three centers, the body chakras, the root chakra, the sacral chakra, and the solar plexus. So that's a bit from Egypt. Did you have any? We were having a long conversation about this earlier, weren't we?
Yeah. I think the thing for me that stands out is that Geb, the earth, incarnation, materiality, being the father of the instincts, Set, the lower instincts, the downward pull, is that it's our survival angst as humans, as being material incarnations in a human life where there's good and bad and unpredictability and, are we connected or aren't we? How do, all of the instincts are the lower chakras, and that is the downward pull. So our materiality and our embodiment gives rise to the lower, the struggle and the balancing against our lower impulses. And this carries right through, all the way through Neoplatonism, the idea of a three-centered being, the idea of we have an animal nature and a more enlightened higher nature. You know, the concept of original sin, we're born into sin in Christianity, that by virtue of being incarnated in a body, we have to contend with an aspect of ourselves. So, you know, that gets distorted in various ways, but the fundamental principle is because we're in a body and our body is mortal, we have all kinds of fears that make us behave in sometimes very destructive ways. So that's the struggle to transmute this. That's kind of on track with the mythology, hey, Rob?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So should we have should we do some movement, seeing as we've been sitting down for a little bit? So yeah, I'd like to invite you to stand up, and I'll try and I can just see myself there. So I'll try and explain. So it's a very
let me do this.
Oh yeah, great, perfect.
So feel free to switch off your camera for this if you want to, but I think Rob and I won't.
Yeah, no, I certainly won't. So this is from Qigong. It's a very good way to get in touch with the earth energy. Yeah, move around, stretch around a bit just to get some space around you. And I'd like to invite you to gather up the energy from the earth. So bend down, gather up some energy, and imagine that you're creating a ball in front of your heart. And maybe it's a round ball. Maybe kind of get a sense of that energy between your two hands. You get a sense that there's something there, and you can maybe move it around slightly, and it's alive, and you've got the energy of the earth. And then as you switch it over, and sorry for the noise behind outside, I live in the middle of central London, just switching the energy over and then pushing the energy up towards the sky and releasing the energy up towards the sky. And just noticing what you're present of, what you're experiencing in your body. And then we can reverse the movement. So gathering up energy from the sky and bringing it down into a ball in front of your heart, and then feeling what's there, being alive and present to what's there, switching it over, and then pushing it down and away into the earth. And notice where you are right now. So we can do this a few more times. Breathing in as we gather up the energy, really generous gathering. Imagine your arms are full of energy. Breath full, and then switch it over, and then push it away up to the sky, releasing the energy. And what are you experiencing? And then again, collect all that energy from the sky and bring it down. Sense of what's there. Something is contained. Getting a sense of what's there. Can you feel something between your palms of your hands? And then switching it over and pushing it down and away into the earth. Breathing in again, collect up that Geb energy, that earth energy coming up, feeling it in front of your heart center. This is the central center. And then switching it around, pushing it back up to Nut in the sky. And then collecting the energy again, bringing it down, feeling it, switching it over, and then pushing it away to the earth. Gathering energy, The energy's constrained. It's like the energy in our physical being is constrained. And then we can switch it over, and then we can push it up to the sky, releasing all that energy out of our system. And then for the final time, gathering up the energy, bringing it down, noticing what's in your body, what's in your soma right now, and then switching it over and releasing it for a final time down into the earth, down to Geb. And then standing up and taking a couple of deep breaths. Oh, just arriving back, noticing what you feel in your body, noticing what's present for you, stretching out, stretching up and down, stretching up and down the other way. We are the conduit between heaven and earth.
Thank you.
So would anyone like to share what they're experiencing right now? Did anyone feel the energy? What did you feel for the energy?
Let's ask Sam.
So nice to be here.
Sam?
Apologies, I was a little bit late, but I was doing breath work in the forest, so I feel like I was on message. And it was beautiful to do that. Really, really lovely. Yeah. The connecting the vertical line and the tension between the up and the bottom, and being kind of held between the two, and just having the opportunity to feel into embodying that, I just found really, really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
I just want to quickly share. Thank you very much, Rob. I felt the real connection between Geb and Nut. It was like amazing, and the ability to switch the energy. That was really, really powerful for me, to kind of like be in that flow after a few times of being able to switch that. So thank you for that. And it also took me to the whirling dervishes, which is kind of like the Sufi connection between heaven and earth. It is like, so thank you.
Right.
Beautiful. And Getty, I think you might have wanted to say something.
It was an incredible sense of the energy, really. I felt it so powerfully. It was amazing.
Thank you. Beautiful. Yeah. So should we move to the heart center and integration, Rob?
Let's do it. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So go back to share. And this is where it all happens, in the heart. 2, 3, and 4, the image center. And the issue there is image versus authentic self. Veracity, the virtue of 3, authenticity. That's what we're looking for. Authenticity is truth. Veracity is another word for truth. This is where we connect with the divine, in the heart of the heart. The heart is the organ of inner knowing, and it's the inner knowing of what is true, what is beautiful, and what is good. The heart in the Enneagram is the magnetic center. That's where we kind of aggregate truth and build our sense of true identity, true will, true intention. In Sufism, intention is in the heart. You get judged in Sufism by the intention of your heart. Not even what you do, not what you say, the mistakes you make. That's where it happens. Remember, in Egyptian mythology, it's the heart that gets weighed. The heart is where everything comes together. Everything that matters is here. And it's the union between Geb and Nut happens there. So let's see what you have to say about this.
Great. So the heart center in the Enneagram, and in Egyptology, we have the principle or the nature or the goddess of Heteru, better known by the Egyptians as Hathor, but we don't like nasty Egyptian words, Greek
No,
words.
Greek.
No, we don't like nasty Greek words. We use the original Egyptian, and the Heteru means the house of Horus. So it's the home of the higher self. Understanding what Heteru is all about really helped me with understanding the heart center. She represents it's the female principle. It's the generative principle of the universe. She's the primordial womb, and she is the goddess of the arts. She's the goddess of beauty. She's the goddess of excellence and music. And as Ingrid was saying also, but her temple in Dendera is also a massive cosmic observatory. So it's quite the kind of juxtaposition to go there and realize that actually you're in this massive observatory when you're in this temple to Heteru, to Hathor. And obviously this relates to the heart chakra. It relates to the heart center. The imagery there is super interesting. We've got Heteru on the right. She's got the two horns. The horns there are representing duality. And then in the middle, we've got Ra, the solar principle, which is a circle. A circle always represents unity. So we've got the duality and unity there as well. She's giving the symbol that she's got in her hand is the Ankh. That's the symbol of life in ancient Egypt, and it's the vitality, it's the life force, and it's often the breath, and that's why she's offering the Ankh to Nefertari's mouth there. So you'll often see the gift of life, the gift of the life force in the form of the breath. We can imagine that the Egyptian temples, the Egyptian priests practiced meditation, just in any in the same form that Buddhism or Hinduism might particularly practice meditation, focus on the breath as the life force, and there's also connection there. They're holding each other's hands. So yeah, Heteru is the house of the higher self. She's the principle of generation, of creativity, and she's a really beautiful. I mean, we could talk all day about Heteru, Hathor, and she's really helped me to understand what the heart center is about and what the heart center types are dealing with. Ingrid, what you were connected with Hathor earlier as well, weren't you?
Yeah. So for me, the awareness is that coming back to the body, embodied, we're here, we're in the body. The heart is the organ that is capable of integrating and processing duality. The heart is the only organ in us that is big enough and has the immense capacity to process suffering and pain, to hold duality. And that is when our heart is healed, we can. So if you look at the suffering of the world, the pain we feel for the tragic things that we see in the world, the things that hurt us, they hurt us in our heart. And it's our heart that's got to hold that and transmute that pain and suffering of earthly life. And our heart is big enough to do that. And if we stay in the heart, if we bring our mind to the heart, if we bring our awareness to the heart, and we pull the energy from the earth up into the heart, and we process duality in the heart, we're actually able to stay balanced in the middle of chaos, because our heart orients us towards truth and towards love. So it's also an ethical principle, and if you think about it, the virtues are heart principles. So if you think about equanimity, say, or serenity, or sobriety, or non-attachment, or right action, go around the Enneagram, innocence. If we can stay in innocence in the heart, so no matter what evil we witness in the world, no matter what we see, no matter how much suffering and desecration of all that is sacred, which we see all the time, if we're able to stay in the heart and keep an open heart, we're able to love the perpetrators of evil and understand that they are subject to various kinds of degradation of the instincts, to distortion, to trauma, to a twisting of their minds, and to appreciate their innate innocence. You know, someone was saying earlier today on Facebook how much she hates Zionists. And I said, wait a minute. Yes, I hate Zionism. I hate the ideology that is causing so much suffering. But think about that soldier who's doing something terrible and uploading the video onto TikTok. Once upon a time, he was a 2-year-old in a sandpit playing and would have had a best friend from any religion, any background, any territory. And for me, that's the principle of serenity, equanimity, sobriety, and non-attachment. In the heart, we're able to process evil, and we're able to stay in a point of balance that allows us to take conscious right action, because we aren't being overcome and overwhelmed by feelings. So the feeling of hatred is different to the higher emotional center, which is not hatred at all. It's equanimity, it's right action, it's balance, it's serenity, it's innocence. So that's where we're able to find a way of living in this world of suffering, is if we stay in the heart. So that those horns, holding duality and holding the sun, being the house of the higher self. The heart is the house of the higher self. So every time you feel overwhelmed by feeling and emotion, like raw feeling, remember that your heart is big enough to transmute that duality and to find value and beauty and truth and right action in here, literally in here. It's not abstract. So that's my sense. And then, Rob, I wanted to ask you about the snake.
Well, the snake is to do with that represents energies, and that's the Uraeus is the snake with Ra there being the solar. So that's it's also associated with Kundalini energy. So you see the snake on the forehead, which is the third eye. So that's another way that we can often see the snake. It's the Kundalini energy coming up through the third eye.
And does it have that kind of universal symbolism of the shedding?
It's a symbol, not so much. It's more of a symbol of energy and transmission. That's what snakes represent.
Okay.
And I just wanted to pick up on the virtues you were talking about, because yeah, all of the virtues are in the heart. So of course, right action as a virtue is a heart-centered virtue. It's heart-centered. So I think it's just worth underlining that, because it doesn't sound much like a heart-centered virtue until you get clear that right action does mean heart-centered action.
Absolutely.
That is right action.
And we can only take right action when we are in non-attachment and balance, and we've transmuted our raw feeling. Yeah. And healing trauma means that we're able to do that as well. Because when we're traumatized, we are completely triggered. We're overwhelmed by feeling, and we're not able to be wise. And in cognitive science, they talk about wisdom is wise coping. And I found that really profound. That wisdom is in that heart of coping with feeling and overwhelm and being triggered. And that's something that comes from the heart. So, can we start wrapping up? We've got about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So this we've spoken about, the heart center, the criticality of the heart center. So we've got the awareness doing the weighing of the heart against truth, and just appreciating the beauty of that. And then if we go here, Rob,
Yeah, let's talk about this one, because and let's be super clear on language, because it's easy to get to kind of use words that cross over in Enneagram. So we've been talking about the heart center when actually we mean the emotional center, because the integrated, the real intelligence of the heart is not the emotional center. The real intelligence of the heart is when we get grounded presence in the body, we get radical clarity in the head, and we get radical open-heartedness in the heart. And the real intelligence of the heart, when Egyptians are talking about the intelligence of the heart, they're talking about that, the place where everything meets in the middle. So it's different to the emotional center in the Enneagram, which is the relational, the connection center. And we've got a little image, I don't know if you can just see it, that's from the other picture, which is the heart being weighed. So that's in the middle. The heart is representative, it's not literal. The Egyptians were conceptual in their use of heart in this way. So it's the area where we feel our emotions, but they were well aware it's the integrated intelligences that they were talking about, and so anything to do with you know, when you read that Egyptians thought we thought with the heart, that's not correct. They were highly perceptive and intelligent about how we operated as human beings. And there's this little phrase I thought was really helpful at the bottom. Her ab means heart, and hair means on. We've got a little face, that means the hair, that's the on, and then the kind of thing that looks like a jug underneath is the heart. So that means it literally means about heart, but if you look it up in the Egyptian dictionary, it means in the middle of or innermost parts of someone. And that's literally how it's translated in the Egyptian dictionary. So I thought that was really helpful for us to understand. Just to clarify really exactly between the emotional center, sometimes called the heart center, and the intelligence of the heart, which is different. The intelligence of the heart is the intersection between the sensing, the body center, the thinking, the head center, and the emotional center. So just making that really super clear. So we get the power of knowing from the head center, we get the power of truth from the emotional center, we get the power of will from the presencing or the sensing center, which all comes together to this. Egyptians didn't contemplate. I was reading this the other day. They didn't contemplate to think. They were it's an experiential presencing, a deep grounded experience, experiencing of the moment through all of the centers, and that's what we're aiming towards, and that's what that's what the origins of the Enneagram are about.
And that brings us back to the interpersonal neurobiology, the neuroscience and trauma, is that as we heal and integrate, we come into what Daniel Siegel calls the hub of awareness. I don't really like that term, it sounds a bit mechanical, but when we heal, we're able to be in the here and now in relationship. That's what healing means. It means the restoration of our ability to be connected to ourself, our body, the here and now, and others, and with the life force itself. So that's what we're talking about. And just to amplify what Rob's saying, the difference between the heart center as the house of the self, the heart center as the higher intelligence of the heart where the virtues live, and the emotional center, which is the passions. It's the things that knock us off our axis. It's the things that overwhelm us. It's the things that contract us and disconnect us. We need defense mechanisms. because feelings are intense and difficult and painful. The heart wounds are feelings. The higher heart center in Kabbalah, not the chakra, the sephirah, is called the throne of God. The Tiferet, this center, is the throne of God, and that's so just incredibly beautiful. And it's where the divine light meets the earth. That's where it happens, in the heart. And I think that this represents that, the coming together, the throne of self, the throne of God. Very beautiful. So we've got 4 minutes. I just want to quickly talk about our London workshop. So there, this True Voice workshop, we're going to be doing an in-person retreat in London between the 5th and the 7th. If you can be there, be there. It's going to be very embodied, very experiential. Not so many slides, lots of movement. Our beautiful Sam is going to be there doing some soul collage with us, which is an incredibly beautiful practice that bridges the unconscious and the conscious in a very shamanic way. So integrating various modalities. And yeah, be there. If you want to know more about it, get hold of either of us. Rob's the better one to get hold of about this because he's self-praise dominant and can give you good information. And
so
then
yeah, it's going to be amazing. Come and join us. If you
dreams.
can't come and join us, I'm sure you know people who would love to come. So please do let them know about this.
Yeah, it's going to be super, super amazing. And I have to just brag about this thing about Russ Hudson saying, I'm so happy that you two are working together. Isn't that cool? How's that? He calls himself Mr. Endorsement, so I wasn't going to let that pass. And then I also wanted to let you know the next 5D trauma-informed Enneagram coaching certificate, 10 months, is starting, on the 19th of June. Whoopsie, what just happened here? 19th of June, 10-month journey. Some of you have been on it. Rob's been on it twice, which is how we ended up collaborating. And yeah, that is, I can say quite honestly, it's a profoundly transformational journey because that's what everyone says about it, not what I said. And it's a combination of monthly online live sessions, which are very interactive, and then monthly one-on-one dyads with different partners where you practice some of the tools and techniques that get taught in the program. So there are various techniques and scripts that you learn. It's very practical, as well as full of traumatology theory, the latest cognitive neurobiology, cognitive science, and interpersonal neurobiology stuff. So proper trauma science, meeting obviously all this mysticism stuff that is kind of baked into my whole life story. So I've synthesized a lot of things into this journey, and it's an IEA accredited training. So that's also starting soon. So these 2 things, and why don't you do both? 2, and if you sign up now, you, no, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, just to let you know about those. So we finished. Yeah.
Ingrid, Dinah's asking for website links to both of the opportunities.
Sure.
I put Ingrid's
in the chat.
in the chat. I put Ingrid's email in the chat. I saw that request.
Yeah. So what you can do is Renata's going to send out these kind of flyers and brochures. So if you're interested, connect with that. It's a detailed PDF with all the pages about the model and the philosophy and what it means to be trauma-informed, etc., etc. And then Rob's will also be attached. So you'll be able to explore both of those. And I do...
I've put the brochure for Enneagram of True Voice in the chat now. You can.
Okay, great.
Get it.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to also make it very explicit that my payment terms are very, very generous people sometimes want to pay over a whole year, even though it's a 10-month program. I want this work to be accessible. My school is very much dedicated to accessibility. And if you are doing work in collectively traumatized communities with a lot of intergenerational trauma, if you're working with violence prevention, domestic abuse recovery, in a recovery environment, so addiction and recovery, any of these kind of spheres, this is a practitioner training for frontline people who are dealing with traumatized populations and want to work with the Enneagram. One of my students on the current program is working with suicide prevention in Aboriginal communities in Australia. Other people who've been on it have been working with the incarcerated in prisons. So this is who this training is really for. Psychologists who want to use the Enneagram more in their work and who want to be trauma-informed in a less psychopathologizing way, in an unshaming way, in a way that works with co-regulation in the nervous system. So this is who this is for. And I just really want to make it very explicit that prices are negotiable and my terms are generous. So if you work as a volunteer in a prison, don't think that you can't do this program. We make a plan. Okay. So I just wanted to make that clear. That's talking about 5D. Okay. So let's stop there, Rob, and I'm happy to stay for questions.
I'm happy to stick around as well, so we don't have to all go. If you've got questions, let's have a conversation. And if you're going, bye-bye. It's been nice to
Thanks
see
for
you.
coming, everybody. Lovely to see you. For those that are going, adios, amigos. Love you madly. Do stay for questions if you have any.
Yeah,
Otherwise-
questions and reflections on what's arisen for you, if anything, like are there aha moments, light bulbs, experiential things you want to share, anything at all? What came up for you? Do you want me to switch off the recording? So, yeah, let's do that. Okay.